ensure that SMEs have enough slashing patients' latest number. Hello and good evening, I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan.
You're watching Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Shall we begin the show with the latest numbers on the COVID-19 outbreak in Malaysia? So we recorded 131 new confirmed cases as of noon today, bringing the total number of cases to 3,793. But on the bright side, today also saw the highest number of recoveries. 236 COVID-19 patients recovered and discharged. Now, in other related news, Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin today announced an additional 10 billion ringgit stimulus package for SMEs. And this included increasing the wage subsidies, a special grant for micro-entrepreneurs and tax relief for private landlords who slash rental for commercial tenants. What do you think about this, Sharaad?
Well, you know, again, it seems one of those things that, you know, governments are learning all over the world how to cope with this particular pandemic, both on the medical side, but also in terms of its economic impact. So here you have a kind of supplement to that much, you know, lauded 250 billion ringgit package. That, of course, included the 20 billion that Dr. Mahathir announced when he was interim prime minister. So, yes, a supplementary one 10 billion, but very targeted in this instance. So,
SMEs, yes.
and I think that's the show tonight,
exactly.
in fact, isn't it, Melisa? We need to understand a little more in a granular sense what this particular targeted supplementary package is all about.
Yes, that's definitely what we want to kind of uncover tonight. Will these measures be enough to ensure that SMEs have enough resources to ride out the pandemic and in the ensuing recession? Now, joining us on the line, we have Datuk Michael Kang, President of the SME Association of Malaysia. Good evening, Datuk Michael. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, some SMEs and micro entrepreneurs had initially claimed they were left out of the first Prihatin package. Now, do you think that these additional measures are going to be enough to keep most SMEs afloat in the coming months?
I think whatever package which the government provided, definitely this is not enough, But at least something the government really heard our voice. I think we are really appreciate the government come out the similar package for SME. This is additional package, I think this is really helpful, and a lot of SME will benefit from here.
Okay, so you said it's not enough. Where exactly does it fall short?
Okay, not enough. I think we are looking at, you see, the government only focused on 3 months. We doesn't know a lot of SME still struggling. There's a lot of we are talking about this is no income totally. A lot of this because of MCO, the lockdown, they are not allowed to do their business. Whatever business, only essential services allowed to do. That's why during this budget, we also asked for the government should allow the SME to do some business if they are doing online. So online business should not only limited to essential services. It's online should be open to any business which SME have, so the SME can, generate some cash for their internal, at least to pay off the staff salary or statutory payment or rental.
Michael, could you tell us a little bit about the process of lobbying government? How exactly did the small and medium-sized enterprises and its associations put pressure on government to actually reconsider its initial package that they seemed very happy with when they announced it? Okay,
you see, what we are talking about, our tagline, we are using Save SME, Save Jobs, Save Malaysia. So if you don't save SME, if SME, everyone, most of the SME, they are short of cash, because we have survey done during the very last minute, within 24 hours, we got the result that 33% of SME, the cash on hand can only last until March. 37.8% the cash lasts until April. That is why we prove it to the government that SME are really struggling for the cash. There is totally no sales because of CMO. So a lot of SMEs facing difficulties. If they can't cross this crisis, they will go into a lot of stuff when they will lay off. If they lay off, that means they are facing a huge trouble. Easily 3 to 4 million of people going to lay off if government did not come in to assist on the cash flow and also the similar package for the SME.
Okay, all right. I want to kind of look at the details of this package, this Prihatin Plus package. Now, I'm looking at the tiered wage subsidies, Michael. The way I understand it is that the larger the company, the more employees it has, the bigger the wage subsidy. Could you help me understand why this is the case?
It's not, because the biggest they are last. I think the smaller they are giving higher wage subsidy. They're 1 to 75 staff. The government gives 1,200 subsidy per employee, but those who 75 to 200, government gives 800 per head. Per employee, that's what they.
Thank you for correcting me. But my question is, thank you for correcting me. That's correct. That means the bigger the company, the smaller the wage subsidy. But I want to understand why this is the case. In the fact that why is it that the size of the company matters in the size of the subsidy?
I'm not sure how the government they did the calculation, but what we propose is across the board. We hope that the government can subsidy everyone's, every employee which employ locally. Local staff they enjoy 1,200 subsidy. I think the end they come out. This is a formula also because originally the 600 ringgit they only subsidy for those employees not more than 100. Company, but this round they extended to 200 and above. But SME definition is 200 and below. So we hope that all the SME, not only SME, I think we should cover every single aspect, because most of the those employments, I think, are so affected. Not only small company or micro, but also big company. They are also facing a financial issue. During this lockdown, they so can't do their business.
Michael, what percentage of SMEs employ foreign workers? I understand that this wage subsidy does not cover foreign workers. How does this affect companies that do have a significant number of foreign workers?
I think the SME engage the legal foreign worker, I think not many. I think the percentage is, I think, not very high. I think it's about 50%. I think the majority of them are illegal workers. I think quite a number are illegal workers, but those illegal workers is based on the job, daily job, their payment, or they did not have any contract. So when totally shut down, I think those illegal workers, SME, they not need to pay them. They only focus on those legal workers. Their company have to pay them, and this is what the government. We also asked government to look into the levy. That is why government give a 25% discount on the levy.
Okay. Well, just coming back very quickly to the tiered wage subsidy, Michael, would it have been better to have one set amount across all SMEs as opposed to this tiered structure?
Yeah, this is what we are proposing. One set, but we hope that the government can subsidy 1,002 across the board every single SME, except micro, because micro consists of higher numbers. So like micro, there's 5 staff and below, because they consist of 700,000 SME on the micro side. That's why we ask government to subsidy on the lump sum, wages together plus the rental plus the fixed expenditure. So all this lump sum together, there's a government giving 3,000 ringgit subsidy for those micro. So at least micro is different with the small and medium.
Michael, there's another interesting element in the proposal that was announced today, which was that the government was encouraging employers and workers on the question of either wage cuts or unpaid leave. Now, when the MCO was first announced, the government said that employers could not cut wages. Is there a contradiction? Have they changed their position? Are employers now allowed to cut wages?
No, they are allowed, because you see, we are talking about this is on the 4,000 and below. Especially we talk about 4,000 and above those employees. I think that part they allowed the employee to negotiate with the staff. They can take cut pay or they can take unpaid leave, or they can take their annual leave, or this is the main idea, so that they negotiate, the employer can employ to negotiate that either they can pay later when the company make profit, whatever balance they can pay it back, or the other option they can use is like share option. No, because they are the higher pay, so they are the company management staff. So hopefully, the company can negotiate with the staff, those the extra payment company did not pay can convert into the share later on, So this a lot of option for the employer and employee to negotiate on how to work together and pass over this economy crisis or the COVID crisis.
Very quickly, Michael, what do you think will happen to SMEs if there is an extension of the MCO?
Definitely, SME after this, whatever government already come out the assistance or subsidy for the SME, I think SME should immediately take their own action, immediately take the initiative and innovate and look into their business, how to transform their business and move it into the digital, use technology and go online. That's why we also propose the government allow the SME, whoever do online business, whether they are essential good or not. Currently the government only allow essential good online business to go on. But other than that, we hope that the government also can open up to allow those SME transform using digitals to do business, and any product they sell online, they are allowed to do that, and also include the export. So we hope that the SME can find a way to overcome their financial crisis. Then plus, we hope that if it's going to extend, we hope the government can come in as additional package to assist the SME, to prolong the MCO.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing your insights and your initial thoughts on this Prihatin Plus package. We're going to take a quick break. After this, we'll be speaking to Professor Terence Gomez of University Malaya, so stay tuned.
Baik, saya nak pesan lah siap-siap kita, siap-siap Kelantan, bukan saja di Kelantan, duduk di luar ni, kalau boleh patuh.
Terence, can you hear us?
Hi.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Macam saya sendiri, saya kalau boleh, kalau disuruh duduk rumah, saya
I feel so close to you, Terence.
Saya kerja wartawan, saya nak menyampaikan berita untuk anda di rumah supaya tahu segala benda perkembangan pasal COVID-19 ni. Lepas tu hari ni contohnya, saya nak mai kerja sampai sejam setengah duduk atas kereta sebab kereta banyak. Tak tahu nak pergi mana. Patutnya ketika perintah kawalan pergerakan ni, orang duduk dia duduk rumah. Ini berpusu-pusu tubik. Jadi tolonglah faham bahasa, bantulah KJL, bantulah geng nurse, doktor, askar, polis, hak tolong berkawal untuk nak putuskan rantai COVID-19 ni. Kalau kita tak buat bahagian kita, bagaimana pokok ni nak buat bahagian demo? Jadi tolonglah berlaku faham bahawa arahan duduk dia di rumah ni, duduk dia di rumah, jangan tubik pergi mana-mana melainkan terpaksa ataupun ada emergency. Duduk dia di rumah. Itu je saya nak minta. Terima kasih.
வணக்கம் எல்லா மலேசியர்களுக்கும் என்ன சொல்ல விரும்புறேன்னா எல்லாம் தயவு செஞ்சு
Thank you for staying with Consider This. Melisa and Sharaad here with you. Now let's continue our discussion on the additional 10 billion ringgit that was announced today as part of the Prihatin package to help SMEs mitigate the economic challenges of COVID-19. To discuss this further, we have joining us on the line Terence Gomez, Professor at the Faculty of Economics at University Malaya. Terence, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Now, why do you think that these measures, meaning more substantial help for SMEs, weren't already included in the first package? Was this an oversight on the part of the government?
Yes, I would say this was a major oversight. The focus of the government, I would argue, in the first stimulus package was really on people. In fact, I would go on to say that the government, when they planned the first stimulus package, the idea was to present it like a budget. I saw it as a political kind of stimulus package, with reaching out to the electorate. The Prime Minister himself said that he did not have the mandate of the people when he opened his first stimulus package. So I saw this as a political response to how he wanted to engage with the electorate to garner favor from them. And in doing so, he left out the SME sector. Subsequently, as you will know, there was a furious backlash against the government from the SME sector. Now, to be fair to the government, what I like about this government is that it has shown itself to be a responsive state. By that I mean recognizing that they had made a major oversight. There was then an attempt by them now to come up with the second stimulus package, where you see the focus is solely on the SME sector. This is very important because the SME sector constitutes 98.5% of the corporate sector.
Terence, do you think that, there's some discussion around the numbers, right? So Mahathir had announced 20 billion. There was the full package announced by Muhyiddin at 250 billion. There was a kind of wow factor mentioned by, magazines like The Economist and such. Should we be looking at it in terms of the size, just the number itself? Is that significant?
No, I don't think you should look just solely at the numbers. The numbers can be misleading. If you want to look at the actual stimulus that has gone into the economy, we are talking about 25 billion here. 20 billion came from Mahathir, and the additional 5 billion came from the Kuttan government, and now you're seeing another 10 billion stimulus into the economy. So don't be too fooled by the 250 billion figure. You should disaggregate the figures to see where exactly the money is coming from, and then you'll find that it's not as big as it's made out to be.
Okay, so how should we be thinking about it? If it's not, 20 billion plus 230 billion plus another 10 billion, how should we be thinking about this? Because already figures of 260 billion ringgit are being bandied about.
To my mind, I would argue that you should not just look at it solely from the perspective of money being put in. I argue that what we should also look at is the institutional framework around which the stimulus package is being presented. Now, to my mind here, what I see as a failure or oversight on the part of the government is that it doesn't seem to recognize that at hand it has an institutional framework which it can employ to effectively get help to the ground. Their focus is really from the point of view of just money. But there's, as I said, the mechanisms in place which the government has at hand, which it has completely overlooked. So let me give you some examples. Now, Melisa, you said in your earlier question, Mr. Kang, can you give us an idea of the corporate world, the SME world? The corporate world today, if you look at Malaysia, we're talking about 1.2 million firms. Now, 98.5% of those companies are SMEs. And those SMEs, you can break it down further, 76% of these SMEs are micro, 21% are small, and only 2% are medium-sized firms. So what that means is the majority of the firms in our country, about 800,000 firms in our country, are micro. Now, this is a major structural problem that we have to deal with. And if you also look at these firms, many of them are also family firms. Now, what is the institutional structure that we have here that we can employ to get help to the ground? If you go back to the period of the 9th Malaysia Plan under Abdullah Ahmad Badawi, that was a very important plan because he recognized that the majority of the firms were SMEs, and he created, under the 9th Malaysia Plan, an institutional architecture which focused on the SME sector. Now, there, for example, he created SME Corp. He also talked about SME banks. He created facilities such as institutions such as MDEC, Halal Development Corporation, the Biotech Corporation. These were all important institutions which were created to help the SME world. What I'm shocked at by this government is why didn't they use that institutional framework that was created, that is in place, and to employ them now to get help to the ground, because they need much more than just these cash handouts. They need also support in other forms. And this is where these firms come in.
All right. Well, okay, we're going to continue our conversation about the institutional framework in just a couple of minutes. We're going to come back and continue this conversation with you, Terence, in just a few minutes. So stay tuned to consider this.
Baik, saya nak pesan lah siap-siap kita, siap-siap Kelantan, bukan saja di Kelantan, duduk di luar ni, kalau boleh patuhlah kepada perintah kawalan pergerakan PKP yang sedang berlangsung ni. Macam saya sendiri, saya kalau boleh, kalau disuruh duduk rumah, saya memang nak duduk rumah. Tapi saya akan kembali hijau sebab saya hijau wartawan, saya nak menyampaikan berita untuk anda di rumah supaya tahu segala benda perkembangan pasal COVID-19 ni. Lepas tu hari ni contohnya, saya nak mai hijau sampai sejam setengah duduk atas kereta sebab kereta banyak. Tak tahu nak pergi mana. Patutnya ketika perintah kawalan pergerakan ni, orang duduk dia duduk rumah. Ini berpusu-pusu tubik. Jadi tolonglah faham bahasa, bantulah KJL, bantulah geng nurse, doktor, askar, polis, hak tolong berkawal untuk nak putuskan rantai COVID-19 ni. Kalau kita tak buat bahagian kita, bagaimana pokok ni nak buat bahagian demo? Jadi tolonglah berlaku faham bahawa arahan duduk dia di rumah ni, duduk dia di rumah, jangan tubik pergi mana-mana, melainkan terpaksa ataupun ada emergency. Duduk dia di rumah. Itu je saya nak minta. Terima kasih.
வணக்கம் எல்லா மலேசியர்களுக்கும் என்ன சொல்ல விரும்புறேன்னா எல்லாம் தயவு செஞ்சு வீட்டில்
Thank you for staying with us on Consider This. Melisa Idris here with Sharaad, Kuttan, and we're speaking tonight to Professor Terence Gomez from University Malaya. Now, Terence, you wrote an article about deploying GLCs in the economic impact of COVID. Now, if I were to quote you, on March 30th, you wrote, "There is little indication that the Prime Minister is using this government ecosystem effectively disrupting the institutional framework that is already there. Could you elaborate?
Yes, that's quite right. Let me first stress that the word government ecosystem was created by the current finance minister, Astro. It's the first time that word has been used, but what it does acknowledge is that the government is aware that they have created an ecosystem which they can employ, which is why I said I'm surprised they haven't employed it. So let me give you some examples of what they haven't employed. If we are talking here now about financing, and we are talking now here about an additional 10 billion ringgit, let's look at the GLC world, for example. Here we have institutions such as the bank, the GLIC Bank, the GLC Bank. We have Maybank, CIMB, Afin Bank, RHB, Bank Islam. Why weren't these banks brought into this framework that we're talking about now? Let's also talk about other institutions that we have, the development financial institutions. Here we have the SME Bank, the MIDF, the Bank Pembangunan, the Exim Bank, and most importantly, too, Agro Bank. I say Agro Bank too because one key sector we need to look at, and which was not mentioned in the stimulus package, was the agriculture sector. Now, this is also important because we do know now that food security is a key issue. So what here we are seeing is, when I look at this stimulus package, is to my mind, I see a lack of coordination going on between these different ministries. Now, all these institutions that I mentioned are controlled by different ministries. The Prime Minister's office has control of a certain number of these GLICs, for example, Kuttan and TNG. We have the Rural Development Ministry, which controls important institutions like MARA, Ketseda, Ketanga, which reach out into the grassroots. Then we have the Minister of Entrepreneurial Development, which is in charge of the SME sector. But when we look at how the government reacted to this crisis, when they created a committee to look into it, we only saw the minister from the Prime Minister's department, Mustafa, we saw Niti, Asmin, and we saw the Minister of Finance, Tunku Zafrul, in this committee. Where were the others? Why was rural development not brought in? Why was entrepreneurial development, which controls the SMEs corp, not brought in? And what about the agriculture sector? The agriculture sector is also important because we have institutions like Pharma. Pharma is responsible for supply chains into the agriculture sector. LKIM, which is the Malaysian Fisheries Development Authority. Now, what is missing in the stimulus package is how are we reaching out, particularly to firms in the rural areas? What about the enterprises which are involved in agriculture? They constitute an important sector in this crisis that we are now facing. Why haven't they brought in? And where in the stimulus package do we see targeting pharma, targeting LKIM to use them to get down to these institutions in the rural areas too?
Terence, if I could just jump in there. One of the things that you mentioned in your piece was the health sector GLCs, and you're saying that these haven't been deployed either, but you give a reason why. You seem to suggest that government is more interested in protecting the profits of GLCs, even though we're going through this crisis.
Yes, the problem here is that these are predominantly publicly listed companies. If you look at Sandabi has got a whole slew of hospitals. If you look at KPJ also has hospitals. We look at IHH, they also have a range of hospitals. Now, I would have thought, and since the Prime Minister did say that it's important to get the private sector hospitals also to help out, I thought since they have majority control of these enterprises, they will bring these health-based institutions into the mainstream. Again, that has not been done. Now, when you had Mustafa on the show, Mustafa said that we have to think out of the box and we have to think of novel ideas. I'm thinking, why don't you use your existing institutions that you have here to get these health-based institutions also in? Now, this is extremely important also because it is not just the health-based sector that we are talking about. I also mentioned in my article, what about the banks? Why is the government not bringing in Maybank and CIMB more into this crisis that we are seeing? There are also other institutions that we can look at, for example, the plantation sector. In the plantation sector, we have FGV. FGV is a very important sector because it reaches out to a lot of people in the rural areas too. So there are all these publicly listed firms which have not been brought into the mainstream of the
Terence, the question is why? What are the constraints on government, do you think? Why?
Well,
why not bring them in?
Well, that I would pose the question to the government, but I would say a lack of insight into the very ecosystem that they themselves are talking about. For example, today, if I may talk about this too, the Prime Minister raised the issue of startups, and he talked about IR 4.0. These are important points that the Prime Minister has raised. But for that, you have to bring in the Ministry of Science and Technology. The Ministry of Science and Technology has got important institutions which play a role. NAFCAP, for example, is a very important institution here. So here, when the Prime Minister himself is raising issues about institutions or sectors that are key that he wants to help, like the startups, which are very important, which are predominantly in the high-tech sector, which he acknowledged too, then why isn't he bringing this? So to my mind, I would argue, they do not seem to be aware that they have these institutions at hand, which they can employ far more effectively. And that, for me, is a serious oversight on the part of the government.
Well, what then do you suggest? I mean, are you thinking about just tapping into this government ecosystem, or perhaps another level of oversight, perhaps having this brought to Parliament and then debated there?
Actually, that's a good point, Melisa, because I also argued in my article that clearly, given that the government seems to be unaware of what's available at hand, this is something that should be discussed in Parliament. I'm sure there are members in Parliament who will be well aware of this framework that I'm talking about, this institutional framework, which has not been employed in this serious crisis that we are now confronted with. If the government had taken up this point to Parliament and debated it, I think many of these issues which I'm now talking about would have been raised. I've seen some of the reports made, also comments made by members of the opposition, and they have drawn reference to some of these points that I'm making here too. So this, again, is another major oversight, I would feel, on the part of the government. The government should not fear taking this to Parliament and having a discussion about this so that there can be at least some debate about these ideas. The only debate I see going on here is within a small group of people within government. It doesn't even engage the larger segment of the public sector that I've just talked about, which should be brought into this discussion. Let me bring up one more point, which I think should be recognized: the spatial dimension. Here I'm talking about federal-state linkages too. If you look at the breakdown of companies, SMEs across the peninsula and in Sabah and Sarawak, 35% of the SMEs come from KL, Selangor. Selangor is now under the opposition. Right. 7.4% of the SMEs come from Penang. Another 11% is from Johor, the three most industrialized states. Now, I'm bringing up this point because if we have the spatial diversity too, and if a large segment of the SME sector is also in the hands of an opposition-controlled state, two opposition-controlled states constitute nearly 50% of the SMEs in this country, should there not be greater dialogue between federal and state governments also in this thing, in this stimulus package that we are talking about here? Can federal and state governments also come together and work far more effectively in trying to help these SMEs?
That's a very important point, Terence, but unfortunately, we have to end on that note. It's a great question to bring up, and I'm hoping that those watching will consider that point. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight. I'm Melisa Idris. With me, Sharaad Kuttan, signing off for this episode. Thank you for watching, and good night.